I think we have to talk about motivation. Because there's some grave misunderstandings about how motivation works when it comes to creating anything. The question is, what lights the fire? How do you light your own fire? How do you light the fire of your kids? How do you light the fire of your team? How do you light the fire? Light the fire. Is it your responsibility to light someone's fire? Can you, in truth, take responsibility for lighting the fire in someone's heart? Can you light the fire? Why do you change? Why do you change? Why do you change? You change first because you want something to be different. But why do you want something to be different? Because you don't like what you have. You're not content with what you have. So you're looking for contentment and you want to get rid of the discontentment. Right? You want a fulfilling life. You don't have one. I think one of the first ways that we light the fire is problem. Who's got the problem? Well, we got a big problem here. Maybe I can create more of a conflict to manipulate myself. Who have you seen do that? Is that close to home? It certainly is for me. I'm going to create a conflict that I can manipulate myself because what's missing is another type of motivation. So I've got to create a mess. I've got to create complexity in order for it to squeeze me like toothpaste and get me out of my way. This is really it. This is problem solving. But if we really look at that, imagining like getting rid of the problem, making sure that we rid the existing circumstances, getting problem solving out is like going to the doctor for pain and giving us some medicine, and then the pain goes away, and then the original thing that caused the pain, well, it's no longer needed, and the pain goes away, and then it goes away, and then it goes away for a while, and then that thing comes back, and then we go back to the doctor, and there's a cycle. And it's not really coming up with any new responses. It's just ridding the problem. And in order to rid a problem, we must assume it's a problem first, and then we have a problem solver that has to go to work on a problem. But I think we need to make a distinction that another orientation is nearby. And I find that a lot of us forget that there are two different orientations, right? That's the creative orientation. The other one's the reactive. I got to react and respond to something that's bothering me. The pain is high. I need to take action to ameliorate the pain. I'm going to get rid of it. But what I don't see is I don't see the whole pattern. I don't see that in that pattern, there's a deterministic outcome. The problem surfaces. Problem action is taken. Rid the problem. The original actions go away with the problem gone. Now the original actions are no longer needed. Which means there's no fundamental solution. It's a fix that probably fails. Which is short term. It's great. Sure. But we're masking the deeper issue. It's like addiction. I'm doing something to feel better. I'm taking a short-term action so that I can rid whatever the discomfort is. I'm getting out of my body, and addiction is doing something despite negative consequences that we don't stop. So procrastination, for example. I know I should stop something, but I don't. Or I know I should do something, but I don't do it. Why? Because I'm in a structure that doesn't lead to that urgency. I'm in a structure that I have to do some things that I don't like. So what I do is I look for the right mood. I look for the right attitude. I try to program myself. I force myself like an actor who's faking it. I kind of try to like it. I use all these cool techniques, Jedi mind tricks, human potential stuff, trying to get into the mode, trying to manipulate myself to do it. Trying to light my fire by self-improvement. Hey, something's wrong with me here. I better fix it. I got something wrong with me. Hey, I better fix it. Someone told me there's something wrong with me. I'm a leader. So everybody told me there's something wrong with me. I better fix it. I think self-improvement is an act of violence. That if it lights your fire to work on yourself, think again. It's you who's assuming you're the problem. I'm not saying that you don't have any quirks. I'm not saying that you don't have any flaws. We're full of them. We're full of them. And maybe one of our biggest is we don't want to be a fool because we don't like the rejection. We don't want to risk isolation. And we love to belong. So our fear of humiliation lights our fire. Well, I better avoid. I won't be liked. So I better do something. I'm going to use my charm. So I got to create a world of outside perception to obscure the inside reality that I have. This is the false self system. I have a belief about myself. The belief system is I'm not adequate. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. What I do doesn't have merit. Therefore, I'm going to make sure that I manipulate the other to see what I am trying to make up for that I disown in myself. So a doctor comes along and says, JD, I need help. What do you need help with? I'm not charismatic. Okay? Why does charisma matter to you? Because charisma makes credibility. I see a lot of other doctors that are very charismatic. And if I don't have charisma, I'm losing traction. It's a marketing problem. I got to be charismatic. So first things first is, the first clue is, if you have to try to be charismatic, who but a person that needs to attempt to be charismatic isn't? So if he does have a belief that he's not, he's certainly begetting the belief, right? What's lighting his fire is, I got to be charismatic, which is really forced because he's got a negative belief. He's got an ideal that he's got to live up to. He believes what he believes. He's taking it seriously. I'm not charismatic. Then I need to. And he's got a strategy. Be charismatic. Which is really phony. Well, he tries to be phony and it doesn't work. And so he's just waiting for someone to see how charismatic he is. But he's dazzling trying to prove that he's charismatic. Because the way he's got it rigged is, if I'm not charismatic, I lose. So I go out and about and I do my care and I do my patient care and I do my things and I'm still waiting to be charismatic. But I'm not. And when someone questions me or doesn't like my experience or doesn't want to do business with me, again, I keep coming back to the reconfirming habit in my mind, and the habit is a judgment. It's a judgment habit. I'm not charismatic. I've disowned myself because I'm not charismatic. All that comparison thinking. So I keep looking at who else is charismatic. Maybe if I could copy them. I could put on a costume called charisma. I'm going to do a costume party where I do charisma. All the while I'm trying to hide this fool that I'm preoccupied with, because if anybody found out how non-charismatic I am, they wouldn't follow me, love me, they wouldn't accept me, they wouldn't choose me, I wouldn't win. I'd be humiliated. JD, show me how to be charismatic. Show me the behaviors that help me put on the mask of charisma. So I said to the doctor, look, you can do all that, but there's an assumption here that is getting you all fired up. You don't think you're charismatic. He said, nope. I said, do you have the basic elements? Do you have the data to verify that? He said, well, I believe I do. And I said, well, when you see it again and again, do you think that you have some sort of confirmation going on to continue your bias? A confirmation bias, right? We've heard of it. He says, well, maybe, but I still can't shake off the belief that I'm not charismatic, and I am absolutely committed to being charismatic because I believe that that's the best strategy for me to get ahead. I said, all right, let me try something. I said, let's get our focus off of being charismatic, looking charismatic, projecting charisma. Let's let that go. Try me on something. I want you to, for the next week, focus on creating a great relationship with your patients. He said, creating a great relationship. I said, well, yeah. And he said, what do I do to do that? And I said, well, think of 3 people that have created a great relationship with you. What do you have? And he said, well, I have trust. And he said, well, they're very approachable. He said, they've taken genuine interest in me. They like me. They like to be with me. I said, great. I said, what else? Well, they're supportive of my dream goals, supportive of who I am. They just choose to like to be around me. They're approachable. They're generally interested. And I said, okay. So I want you to imagine 3 patients right now where you are genuinely interested in their well-being. You are genuinely interested in them as a person, such that you want to get to know more about what they like, don't want, so that you can follow your curiosity and interest. He said, I can do that. And I said, look, let go of this voice in the back of your mind that hijacks you and wonders if they like you, if they think you're charismatic. Quit trying to control their opinion of you. Let them have their own verdict. But focus on developing a couple of goals here. Connecting with them. Learning about who they are. Seeing them. Making them visible. Asking questions that you're curious about. Having a sense of wonder in their presence. And then letting them tell you things that change you. Like being approachable, being accessible, accessing your heart, listening to their listening. When they tell you the stories about their conditions, learn more about what's in the background of their life. What about that astonished you, inspired you, changed you? He said, yeah, that's a different way of looking at it. And so he goes out and he does this and he comes back and he says, I don't know what you call that kind of listening, but I kind of like it. And I kind of realized that there's another part of myself that I've been keeping in the dark. I said, what's that? He said, well, it's just, I don't know how to explain it to you, but he said, there's a part of me that just gets this interior sense of something, a rapture, a vibration, something in me that's radiant that I can't describe. It's just a feeling I get when I'm not paying attention to what they think of me and I'm paying attention to where they are. I said, well, how would you call that? He said, well, I think you call it empathy. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I didn't know I had a lot of it. And I said, great. So the only way you know it is by relating. He said, yeah. And I said, so the way that you learn the properties in yourself is by relating with others. He goes, yeah. So I said, if you only focused on how they think of you, what if they're focused on how you think of them? What if the two of you are thinking about what you both think of each other? He said, well, that would be the cosmic joke. I said, well, that's not probably far from the truth. And then I asked him, I said, well, any of these interactions, if their opinion was different than the one you wanted, can that define you as a person? He said, well, in reality, no, but I still feel like I'm not enough. And I said, okay, well, what are we going to do with that? He said, well, I think I need to write a love note to myself. And I said, well, what? So, okay. So you write a bunch of love notes to yourself and you get that better relationship with yourself, then what? And he said, well, my rule is that if I love myself, that other people will love me. And I said, well, what if that's not true? I said, there can't be every part of you that you're going to love. It's okay to be unlovable. He said, well, if I'm unlovable, then that would mean that I'm going to get in the way and spoil my other people loving me. And I said, is that true? I said, do you think there's parts of them that they find unlovable? He said, yeah. And I said, do you think that when they show up to you that there is a whole person there? He said, yeah. And I said, so you're basically saying that you need to blank out the parts of you that you think you need to edit so that you can only give them the parts of you that you think they want to see. I said, that's disingenuous. He said, well, yeah, but what's wrong with that? And I said, well, would it surprise you to find out that being disingenuous would also probably get a reflection from them that they're doing the same? How do you want them to show up? And he goes, I want to illuminate them. I said, in what way? He said, I want them to feel safe. Safe of what? Safe to be themselves. And he said, when I started listening to their listening and understanding them from where they were rather than where I want them to be and what they think of me, I began to sense a different part of myself that felt real. He got emotional. He said, I was moved. I was touched. A deeper part in myself was felt. And I haven't felt that part. It's like losing a limb and regaining it. He goes, I didn't know that part of me. He says, I haven't heard that since my Hippocratic oath. I remember sitting with a circle of doctors and other doctors wishing me well, and I felt the genuine care and concern, the well-being that they wished on me. I had never been wished well since then. So he looked at me for a while and he said, "Is that emotional empathy?" And I said, "Well, it's intimacy." What's intimacy? Into me, see, see into me. He said, "Well, that's interesting. I think we're getting somewhere." I said, "So why don't we try another week? Be where they are rather than where you want them to be. Listen to their listening. Suspend that voice of judgment inside of you about what they think of you and what shapes you based on believing what that could be of, letting it go." He said, "Yeah, it's kind of interesting when I set my opinion of my worthiness, my negative belief of myself." He said, "I don't need to be preoccupied with it, do I?" And I said, "Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to suddenly convince yourself that you believe a different belief about you? What's wrong with hating a part of yourself? What's wrong with a part of yourself not being lovable?" He said, "Well, I guess in reality it's just about being accurate about it." So that diffused it, like I diffused a bomb. It's no longer needing to be the active lighting of the fire. He had it rigged that his identity was all over the conversation. I need to be charismatic because I'm not enough. It was a no-win situation. It was the attempt to reach for the impossible charismatic opinion. But underneath it all, what's lighting his fire is the belief that I'm a problem. Instead of accurately understanding what a fool he is, and he will never not be a fool. "You are a human being, doctor," I said. "What's that?" And I said, "It's a human that understands his humanness." And I said, "You're so focused on yourself that you're lousy at creating relationships with your patients when you do that." He said, "Yeah, because when I'm focusing on them and just letting go into their listening, I'm not positioning them or manipulating them to like me, to want me, to think of me." I said, "Yeah, you're reducing them into something that you need. So they're no longer a person. They're just a useful tool. And you're making up a big story about if you could get the adulation, everything in this phantom in your mind would go away about your belief. How could they possibly have that responsibility?" Ooh, this was starting to get very, very interesting for the doctor. We went through the next week. He came back after that week. He said, "Coach, I have a very interesting win to share with you." I said, "What?" He said, "I got 3 compliments that I was charismatic." Wow. He said, "I realize that focusing on creating the relationship, it brought me to see what I needed to do to suit that because I wanted to create the relationship. My focus was on increasing my ability to understand them, being genuinely approachable, just opening up, being transparent, showing up as a whole person, listening to their listening, illuminating them, and letting go of this preoccupation with likability, with being enough. Trying to not look like a fool wasn't in the room." I said, "What happened?" And he told me about this one particular patient that had really opened up in a way that he'd never had a real conversation. He said, "I don't think in all my years I've had a real conversation with these people." He says, "I've reduced them to a tool for them to give me something because their responsibility before was on me, was on them to show me what I need them to see me as because I'm afraid to be a fool. And I decided that I could literally admit that I am one. And the moment I found out I am, the moment I know that I am, because that's what I'm afraid of admitting, I realized that that doesn't define my worth. That's just a human being who is in the process of evolving and learning to learn, learning to relate, learning to connect, learning to create. And that most of the things I was thinking about is going to be a mystery anyway. And by letting people decide, I risked my own rejection, coach. I risked my own rejection. I said, yes, you did, because you gave them a choice. They get to choose. They get to choose their sensating of you. They get to choose their perception of you. They get to choose their experience of you. He said, yes. My insight is I can't manage their experience. no one can manage anyone's experience. This was like 100 pounds came off of him. He was managing everyone's experience of him. He let go of having to manipulate that experience. He let come. What happened is by being able to know them, he became known. By crafting not just how he was talking to them, but hearing the person behind the words and attending from a place in himself that felt right, authentic, natural. That vulnerability gave rise to a connection, a trust, some kind of vibration or bond or tone that he started to sense. And he said, I've never felt more of myself than when I'm losing myself or my preoccupation with myself and being in the patient's world. I have to go into their world. I said, why do you have to? He said, well, I want to. It's not that I have to. I just realized that I'm so enthused that I just want to bring myself to that because the feeling is radical. It's great. I love it. But he said more so. He said, I'm learning how to relate in a way that the other feels so safe that they sense my presence, my attending in a different way because they're being illuminated. And he said, Coach, I'm actually seeing a part of them that I didn't see before because I obscured that by trying to position them and manipulate them into editing myself. And that letting go of that need for them to be in the adulation mode, I was able to learn that I could be appreciated for the person that I am. And that transformed me because there is nobody to be. Who but a person that needs to be something is someone who's not that? I said, you're right, doctor. Why don't you let go of being anything? And he said, I'm going to even let go of the whole role and the stigma and the label of being a doctor. I said, that's right. I said, you're a human being in the role of a doctor. And he said, yeah, it's like walking around in a Mickey Mouse suit. It's like I'm in back of it. People are relating to me with their labels they're putting on me. I'm okay with that because I know people frame me that way and they behave according to their model. But I'm not going to manipulate their model. I'm going to let them experience me, but I'm going to let go of the story and the concept of myself that I'm not enough because I know that I have a belief that I'm not enough. And I'm going to shift my attention to creating better patient relationships. And I'm going to use that as merit. And some of those relationships, it's not on me to create them. But I'm inclined to be approachable. I'm inclined to take genuine interest because I am. And I'm inclined to risk this level of vulnerability and strip away this facade mask that I need to project and let it shatter. And as it vaporizes, I show up. I show up. And he said that this gave him a renewed sense of energy. It relit his lamp, not because he was getting praise, but because he was coming into focus on a part of himself that he had to reclaim. It was transformational. And now he could let himself be experienced, and he could experience the presence of someone else by having real conversations, which were meant to just share what was currently present, without an agenda. It was to let go, to let come, and let be, and let in, and have the moment to see with those eyes, to see with the true eyes, the fresh eyes, something original. And you know what he said to me? He said, JD, Coach, it's not that I could see something new happening. It's that I could see something that I saw in the ordinary that I never saw before. And it was always there. I said, what's that? He said, when we disown those parts of ourselves and we're preoccupied with power and we're editing ourselves, we're actually trying to reduce that level of vulnerability by hiding, by camouflaging, because I don't want the other person to see me. They wouldn't like me, love me, I wouldn't belong, and all that. He said, I know that so well that I'm a rascal. I'm a doctor, but I'm a rascal. And I'm a rascal being a human being in this spacesuit of a doctor, having an experience, but I realized that what I was actually looking from, the basic elemental symmetry of my soul, was looking through my eyes of my personality in the role of a doctor that was having a patient-doctor experience. And he said, you know, I now can come in the room and show up And what I can do is allow other people to show up to me because I don't need them to be different. I don't need to camouflage me. I don't need to hide the fool. So since I'm not preoccupied with my foolishness, I decide to let go of that structure. I began to witness a different vantage point, a different reality. A sort of vision and ability to see and sense and be able to presense something that wants to happen through me. I started to sense service in me. I started to sense something coming out of something natural that I couldn't quite put my finger on, that just cared, that just wanted to connect, that was just in the living experience of being on this day, in this connection, treating it without reducing it to something that it needed to be, but just staying alive in it. And it made me feel like I could live again. It was like beginning all over again. It was like a rebirth, he said. Like he came into being one more time. Another epoch in his life. A second half of life began. And that level of animation and reanimation, that level of reclaiming and regeneration was so powerful, it was so moving, that he said the missing piece was humility. A profound humility. The humility to let others, to let other things live there, amaze me, astonish me, inspire me, challenge me. He said it was like letting life live me, through me, take me by the hand, trust. But to get there, there's an awareness. There's something that has to be removed, something that's missing in order for something to be obtained. I said, what's that? He said, it's the preoccupation with the interior stuff you talk about, your belief systems, the concepts. You say, when I have a concept of myself or an expectation or a mental model, and I don't know I have one, I'm sleepwalking. He said, I sleptwalked for 40 years. I'm stopping. I'm not sleepwalking anymore. I'm coming alive. I'm coming to the moment. I said, well, how are you going to do it again and again? He said, well, it's very simple. He said, I'm just going to continue to unhook myself from needing something to be the way I want it. Wanting it doesn't mean that you expect it. It means wanting it means desiring the relationship. But he said, I'm going to let go of the expectation, because we realized that those expectations were rules that he imposed on the other that were creating a forced space for his patients. He also said that he was going to let go of the past, that the past was something that he could bring forward with great skills and accomplishments, but there was a lot in the past in terms of what he was downloading that he no longer could serve, because those things just needed to stay in the past. Those conclusions he made about himself, what he thought of himself, those things could just walk away into the bleachers. Don't feed them. He said, I'm not quite interested in them anymore. He says, those thoughts don't serve me anymore. He goes, I have a different way to frame things. I'm just going to teach myself what's really true, including those things. I said, really? He said, so I'm learning to see. I said, what else? He said, well, I'm going to take a gradual understanding to things. I'm not going to move so fast into trying to figure everything out. He says, I'm going to keep open. And I'm going to keep my open heart to make differences honorable. I said, wow, what a great disposition. He said, yeah, I know so much as a doctor. He said, but I think I have to maintain my inexperience. He goes, my fire is lit by letting go of everything I know. I said, what do you think of that? He said, well, I've got to now get my younger people in here. I want to teach people some things so that what I give away in my wisdom can make space in me for something new. I said, well, that's very interesting, doctor. That's renewing. And he said, yes, because it's that kind of curiosity and that kind of courage and that kind of compassion that keeps me alive. And he said, I'm beginning again, that I'm living, and that I'm coming to presence. I'm coming to participate in my life, not maneuver and manipulate my life. He said, I'm participating in a larger wholeness. I'm participating in a larger structure. I'm participating in a larger process that is underway, and there's magic in that. And I don't have to explain how that magic works. I turn on the light. It works. I know how to connect. I know how to connect with what wants to emerge. I know how to see my own agency and how to serve people. I know how to come conscious of my own predicaments, my own core material. I know how to bring it in the room. I know how to decouple from my shame system. I know how to let go of some fear. I know how to be afraid, he said. And he said, as long as I know how to be afraid and I can confront these inner enemies and I don't need to push against them, but I can befriend them, I can soften my edges, and I will turn my attention to my patients in a different way. Can I tell you, in 6 to 12 months, the kind of feedback that he was getting from the people he was serving? I mean, this was like 2.0. This was 1.0 to 2.0. It was like transmuting or transcending something completely different than the past. Whatever got him there was not going to get him over here. It was a whole new shore. He swam from it, and he worked his way to the new shore. What lit his fire was not a problem in itself to get rid of. What lit his fire was the possibility of generating a relationship that mattered to him with his patients. And that's what he was learning to create, and that's what he's still learning to create. And whatever changed in reference to that emotional intimacy, whatever suspending he had to do of his mental models and certainties, whatever redirection he had to make to his open heart, whatever letting go he had to subtract to add those moments of joy and contentment and connection, to do the conscientious work of relating. He said that the patients that he found were helping them by the way he spoke with them. He had one woman he shared a letter with me with. She said, all the things that he helped me with to get rid of what I had was great, but it was the conversation we had that really healed me. It was the way I was understood. It was the way I was explained things. It was the way the questions were asked. It was the place that I felt the questions were asked from that really made me notice how different of an experience this was. It wasn't mechanical. It was humanity. It was real. We had a real conversation. So I bring up this anecdotal story because, again, I can bend the beam to you. And I hope as you're hearing me, there's a lot of activating content in this for you. There's context that might engage you. And I ask you as you hear this story to reference it by bending the beam to you. Turn the telescope around to yourself and ask yourself, how does this connect with who I am? How does this connect with my true work? The deeds I need to be doing to make better use of my interior resources. Because it really is, all of us, it really is possible to make a difference. And it doesn't mean making a big deal out of it. A difference can be this moment, this time, in the way that we listen, in the way that we hold space. That is the most important leadership skill there is. To conserve legitimacy and acceptance, to hold another and illuminate them. Our children are thirsty for this. They want presence. They want us to know that we see them, rather than change them into the versions that our fear controls them for. Mom, Dad, here I am. Rather than saying, if you do this, if you do this, if you do that, you're this version, I will love you. All the good intent, but the wrong impact. We need to develop this kind of interdependence, this interconnectedness where legitimacy is love and it's letting the other appear. Because that's what love is, it's letting the other appear. It starts with letting you appear. And that love of self is not trying to twist or change you to come into a place where you're conditionally loving you. It's just the very accuracy of knowing what you have and what you don't. And what you're great at and what you're not. What you like and what you don't like. What you hate about yourself, what you love about yourself. It's about being true. Telling the truth. And that commitment to the truth isn't the platonic truth. It's just the truth as truth's sake. It's just true in the sense that you're trying to create something that you really want, but you have something now. It's great. Put it into that structure. He wanted to create a relationship with his patients. It wasn't about being more charismatic. That was all born out of problem solving. Once we got out of that and into creating, he focused more on the relationship, and what came naturally? Charisma. That was the experience they had. Charisma. That was the booby prize of deepening the relationship. Charisma. Because that came out of their experience of him, of being known by him, of being felt by him, of being experienced by him, of having a real conversation. What happened? They concluded it was charismatic. Because they saw the way he crafted his questions. They saw the way that he oriented himself to them. He saw where he put his attention. They saw the inner place from which he was attending. And they felt something. It's not about what he did. It's not about what he said. It's about how they made them feel. It's about how he made them feel. We all have experience of each other. If we could just be a little skillfully transparent in letting other people know our experience of them, we give them a great deal of respect. And respect means to look again. To look again. To look again. Look again at your children. Look again at the others in your life. Look again at your wife. Look again at your husband. Look again. Make it a point to treat the other as a legitimate other. That acceptance is a choice. You have the machinery. You have a heart. Your heart perceives. Wake it up. Unarmor it. Make a choice. Be a great soul. Live your best life. Make an impact and learn to receive. Those are the 4. That's what I continue to be obsessed about and shaping with leaders, is those 4 convictions, those 4 things. And so, I hope this touched you in some way. My intent is that something moved in you. And I hope that what it compelled out of you was getting you access to a higher quality of expression that you can occupy at any moment. And that is love. And love is an act. Love is not just loving something to accept it. Love is to love something, to cherish it, to respect it, to occupy a place where it has value and it is valid and it's not reduced and it is precious for what it is. Thank you.